Hello, everyone. This time, you're trying something new. The new year has brought for us two new individuals, Ingrid and Emily. And this episode is going to be purely a one-on-one conversation between Emily and Ingrid. And Emily would be the mentor and Ingrid is the mentee. And she'll be talking about different things which she faces as a person in IT audit and a recent ISACA CISA holder. So she should, emphasize more on how things are working in that realm. Some of us want to do CISAs, so give us some encouragement. So anyways, without further ado, I want you to welcome Ingrid and Emily to the show. Welcome.
Thank you, dear.
Emily is already smiling. I don't know if she's frightened by her mentee. I don't understand, but so tell us about yourselves and what is unique. Tell us one unique thing about each other. So we shall start with Emily.
Thanks for putting me on the spot here. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our viewers, wherever you'll be, or whenever you'll be watching this. You're welcome. Yeah, as mentioned, Emily Maymara is my name. I am a CISA as well, that is a Certified Information Systems Auditor for those that may not know the acronym. But then also, my first degree was Bachelor of Information Technology and later did a Master's in Business Administration. A bit about me, I've been in the IT field for now 14 years and 8 of which have been in audit. So that's it in brief about Emily Maymara. Yeah, I'm also a board director at the ISACA Kampala chapter, where I'm the membership director. Yeah, I think that sums it all. Yeah, Deo, you mentioned something interesting, to mention something unique about me. Should I say? Unique, especially on the professional field. I think it's more about bringing that blend of the technical expertise, but then also being people-centric. I normally take that into account as I carry out my audit assignments. So I think I find that unique about me. So thank you, Dale, and over to you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Emily. I think I should have started first, given I'm the one with the lesser years, with the smaller shoes right now.
But you're the main thing today, by the way. So you're the main guest, to be honest. as the mentee, definitely it's going to be your show. So
yeah. Oh, okay. So to start with, I'm Ingrid McLean Teko. I normally like to split who I am into two, because there's who I am at work and then there's who I am on a personal basis. But of course, this is more on the technical side. But briefly, on a personal basis, I believe I'm a friendly person. I could say a social flower from time to time. And I just love spending time with family when I get the opportunity. So outside that personal life, I'm a senior associate at BDO East Africa. I have been working there for 3 years. I started there straight out of campus. I joined under the graduate recruitment program. And in campus, I studied Bachelor of Business Computing. So I joined BDO East Africa in the audit space, and I've been thriving in that space, I'd like to say, ever since. I'm a recently certified CISA, but also soon to be certified SCCA. I also just completed my SCCA studies last year. That's just a brief about me. One unique thing about me is I think I'm really driven. I don't give up on things easily. And I think me having completed my SCCA at this point could attest to that, because my major aim, and of which my background was to focus my career on IT. But at the start of my career, I had to go into financial audit before I could then divert into IT. So the requirement was that I do SCCA. So at the time when I could move into IT now, I had reached halfway SCCA and I didn't see the need to complete it. But then at the same point, I felt like I could not leave it halfway. So me reaching this point where I can now say I've finished SCCA is such a testament to me saying I cannot leave something half done, no matter what it is. So I think that's what's unique about me.
Wow. Emily has something to say. She's yeah. Emily, what do you want to say?
What do I have to say? Well, I do appreciate that resilience, And yeah, you mentioned something else about starting out on the financial side and not doing the IT audits. And I felt, that was also a little detail that I left out. I also started my audit career the same way. The first 2 years were actually doing non-IT audits, then the rest were doing IT audits. Maybe another detail is that I'm also ISO certified with the lead auditor certification. So that's just about it. But yes, I do appreciate your resilience. And that is what you need in this field. That's what we need in this field. Yes, thank you so much. Over to you, Dale.
Okay, so the next phase is now going to be purely Ingrid. So she's going to take on the asking of the questions, and I'll come in once in a while to chime in. But Ingrid, the show is now yours, so feel free to ask the questions, and then let's see what to do next. So
Thank you, Dale. I'm definitely going to be taking notes so that now I can go back and sign at work with the pointers I'm getting from these questions. Quite excited. But okay, so moving into the technical bit of it, Emily, what key areas do you normally prioritize when you're conducting a security audit? And how do you ensure that the audit findings are both detailed and actionable for an organization?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for that good question. And maybe because there'll be different people watching this podcast, so I'll start by mentioning that before we carry out any audit, the first thing we do is to understand the audit area. That is the basic principle on any audit assignment that one is carrying out. So as we are planning for this audit, we are going to sit with the audit client, I should say, or call them audit client, and then sit with them and understand what exactly they do on a day-to-day, especially pertaining that area. So right now we are talking about the security. So while I'm carrying out that audit, high level things that I would normally look out for, risk, how are risks being managed, compliance with regulatory standards are some of the things that would definitely be top on my head. But then just to break that down further, I can talk about the nitty-gritties that one would do. Like when you're carrying out a security audit, you may look at network security. What are those things under network security that one would look at? Yes, so Another aspect to look at as we are looking at network security are access controls, that these are actually properly configured. Then another aspect that I would look at in a security audit would be application security. Earlier on, remember, we had touched network security. So right now we would look at application security, and in here we are looking at maybe input validation. In that case, if you're going to consider, say, a system, you're then looking at those controls that you would expect. In brief, we are looking at controls that you would expect in this application. Input validation, are these checks actually there? If you're looking at, if like it's a name field, is one actually able to have numbers in there? Because at the end of the day, it is garbage in, garbage out. So you're trying to minimize how much unclean data that you actually have in your application. So other things you'd look at would be input validations, authentication. You're also looking at how are errors being managed in this application. So you could also, be able to provide some oversight on that. Then another thing that you would look at as you're carrying out a security audit, another key thing that we would look at would be user awareness, because at the end of it all, you're, just like the adage goes, you're as safe as your weakest link. So another thing that you're carrying out as you're doing the security audit is basically user awareness, just to provide that oversight on the awareness and trainings. In brief, another thing here would be data protection. You're also able to you'd also look at aspects of encryption in your system. You're also able to look at backups. How are those handled? You'd also be interested in looking at some of those aspects. You'd also be interested in finding out if our data is actually classified. How do we handle sensitive information? How do we handle confidential information, like all those other things? So you'd be interested in all that. But then the last part of the question was, how do we ensure that the recommendations are actionable? Was it that, Ingrid?
Yes.
Okay. So normally, as you are carrying out your audits, personally, my approach is you try and engage with the audit client like as much as possible, so that then even when you're making these recommendations, they're actually going to serve the intended purpose. But then also you're addressing the root cause, the root cause of whatever exceptions that you would have found out. Bringing such aspects really help to make your findings credible and more acceptable by the clients, and it reduces the back and forth as you're having the exit meetings.
Yes. Okay. That's those are actually really good points. The back and forth is something I can also attest to. Something that you definitely experience with a number of clients. And I like that you highlighted the point about you being as safe as your weakest link. I think it's something I'm always trying to highlight to clients as well, that human beings is not catered for in the right manner, and also cause the biggest disasters. So thank you. So moving on to the next question. So in your experience, Emily, what are some of the most commonly overlooked vulnerabilities, and what strategies from your experience still would you suggest should be implemented to address these effectively within an organization?
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, that is a very good follow-up question from what we were talking about earlier. Common vulnerabilities would look at from my experience, you would find at times it's weak authentication, where some organizations could be still using a single factor and the like, poor password management. Those are normally common vulnerabilities that we do find. And then another one could be using outdated software. You find, much as you're still using outdated software, at times there could be reasons why they are doing so. I remember in one of the organizations where I worked at the time, there was still an XP machine. Then we're like, oh my God, how are we still running this? But then again, they tried to explain that there was a software that was running on it, and is it the vendor? Like, there was a whole explanation to it. So each time you'd actually be carrying out the review, you'd definitely still find, such pieces or software still being used. But then again, much as that is there, you still highlight, the risks that come with using such outdated software. So as an auditor, you need to explain some of these, much as business normally has their own way of thinking. They want things to move as long as, the application is running. If it's a business, the monies are coming in. But now when you come with, as an auditor, you're then able to, express all this, the risks that are associated with using such. You just try and, keep on insisting and pointing out such issues to them. Another vulnerability would be poor logging and monitoring. At times what we've seen, even when, the logs are actually there, if they are not reviewed, still they might not, actually be serving the purpose, So at times it's that, but then also it could also be an issue of inadequate logging, which would make it difficult to detect a breach if it would, if such a thing would be able to occur. Another vulnerability that we would look at would be ineffective encryption mechanisms, or at times even there is no encryption at all. When if, let me say, it is an application and then you're having data being exchanged, but then it's actually not encrypted, that is definitely a very big vulnerability. When we are having all these exchanges in plain text, that is a big one. And indeed, from my experience, at times we may talk about some of these things and they seem very obvious, but when you're actually going to look into some of these applications, at times even when you're having an integration between two different applications, then when you're able to look at those interfaces, that's when you're able to see that actually all this is in plain text. But then again, just like I mentioned, business, for them, as long as work is moving on normally, they may not quite pay attention to some of these things. So the role of the auditor then, just like I'd mentioned earlier, for me, key thing is you're looking at risk management, you're looking at compliance to standards. I mean, some of those things really be top as you're carrying out a security audit.
What is the shelf life of logging? How long should an organization contain some of those logs, especially for different, let's say, firewalls or devices on the network? How long should it be? Is there a specific one?
Oh, is that I'm not quite sure that we do have a specific one. I guess it could be unique, no, maybe not unique, but organizations really, because it's management that would be setting some of these standards. How the sufficiency of the logs it may not be a one size fits all, you know. It may not be a one size fits all. However, depending on the industry, then you would really see maybe how long and also your resources to be able to manage some of that data.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very insightful and quite familiar in terms of vulnerabilities. So the next question is, what steps do you take to align security audit recommendations with an organization's strategic goals while also considering resourcing and budgetary constraints?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. Yes, so IT is not normally, but it's it involves how should I say that? Trying to look for the right words. Yes, when we are looking at the IT environment, it's not unique that the budget spends are normally quite high, but the question we're talking about, how do we align our recommendations with strategic goals? So normally what would drive that would be a risk assessment. If a risk assessment has been carried out, then if an observation is high risk, then it would definitely need to be attended to. It would be, okay, if I'm to look at it like in terms of the scaling, that would mean if it's a critical issue, then definitely the resources would need to be allocated as such, but then that would be following the risk assessment. Then later on would have a phased approach of the spending, depending on what we have at hand, so that you would have maybe the high risk, if I'd call them issues, or what would be considered high risk, those would be, considered first, then you phase them until later on when you have to spend on the non-critical issues after you've dealt with what affects the bottom line the most, and those would be the high risk issues. Then another thing that would consider there would be a cost benefit analysis as you're making your recommendation, because then you do not want to make a recommendation to an issue back to again the risk assessment that we talked about earlier. You have an observation, but then again, when you look at the level of investment, financial investment that needs to be done, and the value or the benefit from that investment, then as an auditor, you then need to tailor that so that resources are not locked on non-critical items, and then later on, you have critical items, and now the budget, then you have to start suffering with management, maybe not suffering per se, but going back to again ask for exceptional approval, which would have otherwise been avoided if you have all that really streamlined. I hope I've attempted to answer you.
Yes, you have very well. That's one thing I think one difficulty I've come across from the point of view of external audits, especially where it's difficult to know the depth of the client's budget or the budgetary constraint to say. So sometimes we may propose recommendations and we return to review and realize that certain recommendations may not have been implemented as effectively due to such constraints. So maybe before we move on, what I can ask is, so in such scenarios, would you say we could then turn to look at other mitigating controls?
Yes. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. definitely those are other aspects that we need to look at. Even when you're making your recommendations, you're then able to look at compensating controls as you're making your recommendations, so that, again, back to the risk. I normally like looking at the risk, yes, that I had mentioned earlier. So it does help so that you do not have resources locked up on a solution or an issue or observation, and yet there are other mitigants that are in place already.
Okay. Thank you for that, Emily. So moving on to the next area. We are at a point in time where we've seen so many kinds of technologies, AI tools that are, coming into play. So with that in mind, how do you see automation and technological tools evolving the audit process, and what benefits or challenges do they bring to your role as an auditor?
Wow, awesome! That is a question that does speak to my heart. Automation. Yes. So looking at it from the audit perspective, definitely these tools bring efficiency gains in terms of our role as auditors, because then when a task that would have otherwise taken you 2 days, you're actually able to cut it in even half the time, or maybe even quarter the time, when you're actually able to embrace some of these technologies. And this here would be the AI-driven tools like you've mentioned. It could be analytics tools, and just like you mentioned earlier, even about the financial audits, if you're able, what would otherwise take you, a very long time to do, you're actually able to achieve it in much less time. Then also these tools actually help us get deeper insights into the data that we have. All these organizations, like, they collect or deal with so much data. However, as an auditor, how you're then able to add value to the whole, to the system, or to the particular area that you're actually auditing, if you're actually able to pick out some of these insights and bring them out to management. And that's where some of these tools actually come into, to help out with that. And this enhances our audit findings. You asked something about challenges. It could be how these tools are actually implemented or integrated into our applications. A major challenge that I would look at would be if this integration, does it bring in new risk exposures? That would be a challenge that I would actually look at. So still about the risks, as we are looking at embracing all these tools, all these different applications that actually do make our work easier, we need to carry out those risk assessments, detailed risk assessments, to ensure that, we are not actually, having new risks, coming into play. So that's what I'd talk about that. But yes, this does speak to my heart when we're talking about automation and the like.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with you on the fact that it does simplify and speed up the process from time to time. So the next area is... Yes,
sorry, there's one thing that also, there's one thing maybe that I would perhaps add to that. These tools, we could also use them with our normal audit softwares that we use for the audit management. For some of them, you're also able to integrate, integrate other applications to them, so that then even your follow-ups are made easier and automated. So that's just what I felt I needed to add.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think that speaks to the aspect of continuous monitoring, continuous audit tools. But okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the next question is, how do you approach knowledge sharing within your organization to ensure that departments can adopt and sustain improved security practices following an audit?
Okay, thanks so much. This is an interesting question. I'm trying to look at my setting with the experience. We're talking about knowledge sharing on the audit observations.
Yes, and the audit observations, at least from my point of view, one difficulty I encounter is well, that the finding may be there as well as the recommendation with the risk tagged to it. But there's sort of a difficulty from the point of the actual users or the actual implementers on, how best can we implement this, or why not just stick to the method that we've been using. We're used to this method. This is going to be a bit more difficult, things like that. So how can you approach such scenarios, where now you have these departments that you are working with, that you're auditing, and you've come up with recommendations that are sort of probably going to tweak some of their processes that they might have to, in essence, adopt and sustain these improvements that you're suggesting.
Okay, thanks so much for throwing some more light on that. When we are talking about this, one aspect maybe one thing that I normally do when carrying out the audits is to involve auditees as much as possible. But then again, when it comes to making these recommendations, what are we saying? We need to show them what is in it for them. There is a term that once I was in a training, it was called selling of the audit findings. So it means we are actually making management or the business to see the value in some of those findings. There's an example that you are giving that maybe from your recommendation, it's going to change their normal operations. So when I'm trying to sell this recommendation to them, I would actually be showing them how this would actually help them maybe reduce their time they would be taking on a particular task, or if it would actually make their processes shorter, depending on the recommendation that we've made. Or if you're saying that maybe if you onboarded such an application, this is how it would actually help you to be more efficient in achieving your objectives, but also the organization as a whole. Because, much as we are saying it's IT, but then again, when we are looking at IT governance, we're also looking at how all that feeds later into the bigger picture, which is the organization objectives. So when we are looking at the part of the knowledge sharing, it's basically to make them see where you're coming from on the audit side. I believe if you're actually able to have this skill of selling these findings to the clients, then from my experience, they would actually you'd be able to achieve some mileage. Of course, in the beginning, they could face some resistance, but they'll eventually get it and actually appreciate.
Yeah, and I like the point of view of selling the recommendations and the findings to the client. It's definitely a skill I'm going to sharpen for some of our tough clients. So moving on, what unique challenges do you face as an auditor when assessing an organization's cybersecurity practices? And in line with that, how do you navigate potential conflicts or biases to maintain objectivity. And maybe an example that has come up in my mind as I was going over the question again is where we have clients who, you know, we've made them aware of the finding and the risk and the recommendation, but they are just pointing out or had on the fact that they would like that finding taken out, or they just would not like that finding presented. They're going to argue it out with you until a point where, you know, they say, this is where we stand. We don't agree with this finding. And you as Emily, you know, Emily, you're our friend. Why don't you just remove this finding for us?
Yeah, like this one is a very big problem for you guys.
Oh yes, objectivity. Yeah, thanks so much for throwing more light onto the question. Yes, definitely looking at this, you definitely face resistance from the audit clients when your recommendations come up, when your observations come up. However, how do you counter that? You maintain objectivity as, you know, you're carrying out your audit work assignment. But then also this can be done by fostering transparent communications with the audit clients. So even as you're carrying out your assignment, yeah, objectivity, professionalism, those are some core values that then you need to maintain as an auditor all through as you're carrying out, you know, this assignment. But then also, well, there's something else you talked about. How do you overcome them? By, again, like we mentioned earlier, these findings, you need to frame them or package them in a way that one is actually able to see an opportunity in there for them, you know, either to grow or basically just to show them what is in it for them, and then they would be able to take in, you know, what you would have recommended. But yeah, the challenges are there. Yes, Dale.
Yes, so I'm just trying to get a picture. Now, let's say a good example of the one you gave before of data validation. So the information is not properly being encrypted, and the information is not being checked before actually being sent. So how do you bring about a cohesion when a client is complaining that his system is okay and you shouldn't include that? How do you handle such a situation?
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. When you've carried out this audit assignment and then you've brought out some of these observations, of course, one thing is, as an audit client, for them, they're saying they're working normally. But then again, just like I mentioned earlier, to show them the risks that are involved in actually operating that way. Because you find if you're having two applications and then the data being transferred is actually in plain text, that means if anyone actually had access to that, you know, to that information, then they would, you know, be able to use that against the company. And depending on to what extent they're actually willing to go, it might actually result into financial loss and many other risks that would come to that. So your role as an auditor in this case is, I would not call it sensitization, but then to do that awareness to them and actually show them the, you know, the disadvantages in operating the way they are operating. If we are talking about the outdated software, why, basically you educate them, if I would say, why is it wrong to use, you know, software that's out of date? That means they're not receiving updates. That means they are more vulnerable to attacks and all these other things. So yeah, how you actually bring that to management, I think that's it is also a skill, because the way I can tell you that, Deo, when you do not encrypt, this is it. But then again, if I package it in a way that you're actually able to see that what you're doing, is not right, and I also show you basically how exposed you are and the dangers in operating as with the system as is. I think anyone really would have buy-in on that, especially if you're showing them the risks that are involved, but also to come with solutions. So
Okay,
the recommendations should really be addressing the root.
okay. I'm imagining a situation where someone is like, okay, yes, we have seen data validation is not working, but the next time you come back, we shall sort it out. Just approve us for now. Has that ever happened?
Yes.
And maybe just before Emily jumps in, okay, those questions are sparking the point of view of risk acceptance. Maybe as you respond to that, at what point does a risk acceptance document then come in?
Yeah, that's amazing. So if you point out a risk, but then for one reason, just like earlier, we're talking about the budgets. We're talking about the budgets and all that. But then again, management, this is something that is high risk, especially the risk acceptance that normally would look at it for like the high risk observations. If they are not able to address that, then they will definitely have to have that appended on a document that we are accepting that we are not going to mitigate this risk because maybe they've looked at the likelihood of occurrence, or they are actually saying that maybe because of budgets, then they'll definitely need to conform to that, at least have that written down and signed that they're accepting that risk.
Yeah.
So as an auditor, normally we report as a point in time, a point in time. And if someone is saying that, no, let me sort out the issue right now, then you do not report it. Well, at times, because again, the work of an auditor, I think there's also a lot of judgment in there. If you've actually carried out, you've assessed the risk, and maybe if from doing that, it completely takes away the risk, maybe. But then again, remember, you report at a point in time. So if at the time of carrying out the audit assignment, there was a non-compliance, then you would have to report it. However, you may acknowledge later on that during the course of the audit, maybe they implemented ABCD, the controls, whatever they could have tried to address, as they're also trying to reduce the risk rating. Times when you carry out those audits is high risk, medium risk, low risk. So, depending on the explanation that you've got, at times it's also good to acknowledge what the client has done. So you may just have that somewhere. But it doesn't remove the issue. Yeah, it doesn't remove the issue.
So, the aspect, there's still a missing bit of it concerning, like, an example of softwares which are outdated, but they're needed for the organization. If they come out and they say that, okay, we have set up a firewall and it's able to block such incidents from happening, and we have put it like in an air-gapped system where it won't be easily attacked, how would you approach such a situation?
How would we approach such a situation? Well, because at the end of the day, as you're carrying out this audit, we acknowledge what measures that the client or the business has actually put in place, especially if now, like in that case, like the outdated software, like there is no way they can actually do away with it immediately. But then also, just like Ingrid had mentioned earlier, they accept that we are using this and all that is documented, so that even you as the auditor, when you come, and maybe those necessary approvals are also in place, that business has said we are not changing, given their justification. But then also you appreciate, just like you mentioned, the other controls that they've put in place to at least mitigate the risk of a breach taking place because of that non-conformity. So we acknowledge their efforts.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Emily has said. Deo, I hope now you're satisfied with the response that you've gotten.
100%. I'm very comfortable now.
Okay.
Please take it.
Okay, so Emily, as we come to a conclusion on a lighter note, how do you balance the demands of a high pressure career with your personal life? Are there any hobbies or practices that help you to stay centered? Do you know one thing they say about auditors is you literally have no lives, but I don't believe that is so if you really don't try all avenues. So how do you manage to stay centered on a day to day with the career that you have?
Emily, hopefully you're not lying because I know you very well. So please.
Yes, Ingrid. At least, much as I've been 8 years in the field and you've done so much, you really appreciate that there is pressure. There is pressure on this front, and from the environments that I've worked in, no one is even telling you, by the way, we did it, but it is on you. I need to submit this report by this date and I have to beat this deadline. I know I have this. But how do I manage this? Well, I do have some hobbies. I love singing. There are some things that really help me keep me in balance. I love music. So for me, that does help, with that. But then again, striking the balance. I remember when you were introducing yourself, you talked about family time. Sometimes there are some of those things that help clear your head for a bit. When you're spending time with family, you're in the spaces, if it's church, if it's listening to that music, at least sometimes that really helps, to shade off the noises for a bit. There, that's it. I hope you've learned something new.
Shading off the noises is what I just understood.
For a bit, because our trade is interesting.
I totally agree with you on that. And I think so for the last question that I have for you today, and for me it really hits home.
Before we move on, Ingrid,
yes,
with the short time you've spent in the field, how do you balance this pressure?
okay,
even if you've been in the field for a year or 2 years, you've experienced it. So how do you manage that?
So on my end, one thing that I always go back to is swimming. I like swimming. I think it's just a time for my body to release all the stress that it has been holding up. Family time, like I mentioned, also tends to take that away. So just going back home and just spending time with family, away from the laptop, away from the phone. Friends as well. I spend a lot of time with my friends too when I get the opportunity. And then there are weekends where I just close the laptop and just watch some movies or some series. And start the week when I finish the whole series and say, now, good to go. There's nothing holding me back.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining swimming in the middle of the night. Because you're
Ah,
saying swimming as the first thing, I'm imagining you're out of work, the first thing you go to is the pool. Do you have a pool near you? Or what?
no. If I got the chance, I would have one near me. But swimming, that's mainly over the weekend. And maybe one thing I forgot to add is in our profession, I think people tend to give so much to the job and forget that you can also take leave. Just take leave and take time away from the laptop, away from the work calls, and just find yourself outside work, what you're about. Yeah.
Dale, you need to take leave.
Soon.
Yeah, awesome. You know, there's a proverb in the Bible which talks about iron sharpens iron, as a man sharpens the countenance of the other. So yeah, as we are sharing now, you've made me think of swimming as well. So maybe the next time we have a conversation, I'll be telling you that I swim too.
You
Yeah,
swim or
yeah.
you drown? Which one is which?
No, I think it
Eh?
would be a good thing to take up. I think one thing I
Okay.
forgot to mention is walks. So yes, like
Oh, yeah.
they asked, when I can't swim in the middle of the week, I take walks. I think it clears the head, just walking around the neighborhood and just listening to nature, aside from taking phone calls and being in meetings and all those things.
Uh-huh.
I think that's another.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Great.
Yeah.
I
So
do take the walks, so we can carry on.
on to the last question, which, like I said, hits home for me as a lady. What challenges have you faced as a woman in the IT industry, and how have you been able to navigate them to achieve the success that you have achieved and are continuing to achieve, for sure?
Yes. So as a lady in IT, there definitely there's one challenge that normally is glaring, even from the time when we are studying. If you look at the number of ladies in the IT class and in the field, it's not any different. So there is the males, it's more of a male dominated field. Personally, I've not let this, hinder me thriving in the field. But then again, there have been definitely deliberate actions that I've taken as a lady in the field. And this has been having a support network, when you're able to network with other ladies that are in the field, continuously growing professionally by taking on different certifications and improving yourself, the skill that you're having. Then also at ISACA, maybe now I'll take this opportunity to talk about ISACA. At ISACA, there's a program that was launched, which was called the She Leads Tech program, which was actually brought on board to promote diversity and inclusion in the technology industry, particularly by increasing the representation of women in technology leadership. So part of the pillars that ISACA, or that She Leads Tech, which is under ISACA, stands for, that is raising awareness in terms of such, but then again, educating professionals about the importance of gender diversity, and also bring to light some of these challenges that are faced by the ladies. So then if you're able to know that, okay, what is happening, just like I relate the Bible again, there's nothing new under the sun. So even the challenges that you're facing, someone has gone through them. So you know that, okay, when I'm having this challenge, this is how I go about it. Then also another pillar that the She Leads Tech stands for is building global alliances. And this is done with collaborations with other organizations to enhance the program's reach and effectiveness. So as a She Leads, as at ISACA still about this program, then you're looking at the other things that there are platforms that have been put in place where, you know, ladies do share about all these things on such platforms. So actually the avenues are there, so you do not have to reinvent the wheel, but there are things that have been done. We've seen very many ladies succeeding in the tech space. So you can't be sure that you will also succeed in this space. We have many people, just like one of the ladies, the co-producer with Deo on the show, Mrs. Josephine, you know, Olok, like she's one person that really inspires me a lot. So then again, as a lady in the field, you may want to get someone you look up to, you know, so that, you know, to just be inspired, you know, just like we have mentors and idols that are out there in the world. So even in the professional space, you're actually able to have someone that you've seen, you know, break those glass ceilings. So you tell yourself that, yeah, you want to be like them. Another thing you can do, take them out for coffee, find out how have they done it, you know. So you don't really have to be in this box when there are actually solutions out there. Then also there are mentorship programs, even still under ISACA. There are mentorship programs for people starting out in the field. You could actually consider having a mentor who would walk you through this journey in case you want to take on a professional certification. Which one should you do? Which ones are relevant for you in the field to be able to progress in your career? So there's a lot there. And actually, I'm proud to say that the time when that program was launched by ISACA, I was among the first people to take on those opportunities. Much as still, yeah, I was a professional in the field, but there's always more to learn. There's always more to learn. You could be, there's basically more to learn, you know, I would just say that. So can consider getting a mentor to walk that journey with you. Even after 8 years in the audit field, 14 years, yeah, I still have mentors and people that I do look up to in the field. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. That was a perfect response and definitely encouraging for me as an up and coming lady in the STEM industry. So thank you for that, Emily. This has been a largely enriching conversation for me. I definitely have a lot to take away and think about as well, and also apply. Stolen some pointers from you, and I'm going to surprise people at work with some ideas. But yeah, it has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, over to you, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Ingrid. The concept of this was to bring someone who is new in the industry and also someone who has been there in the industry. So hopefully it has been a fruitful one. I remember Emily hinting about taking her out for coffee. So hopefully Ingrid is taking notes on such statements.
Yeah. I'm waiting to send a coffee date invitation very soon.
Yes. So Emily, just to be there just ready.
Yeah, let me just enrich my pockets for you, Emily. That I'm coming.
So, other than that, any parting shots from any of you, Emily, Ingrid, before we end the show?
Yeah, okay. I guess I can go with I can take that one. So as a person, as you say, who is new in the industry, basically 3 years and a few months into the industry, audit is a very intensive line of work, but there's always a lot to learn every day. Every client or every organization is always a learning opportunity. And I think to everyone out there, and mostly the ladies at least, it's something I would encourage them not to shy away from, because like Emily has mentioned, there are lots of mentors in the space. There are lots of spaces where we can, get into and share what we know, what we learned, and what we are looking to achieve. And I think I definitely appreciate Deo and the team as well for the good work that they're doing with this podcast as well. I think it's touching many. You might not know who and when, but it's definitely leaving the impact that you seek for it to leave. It has definitely left one on me as a member or as a guest on this podcast. Yeah, so thank you, and to the listeners, we appreciate.
Yeah, thank you so much. I would close by giving us a quote by John Malloy, who says, "Security is not a one-time event, but it's an ongoing process." So, coming from my audit perspective, I know that even when we are carrying out these audits, it's more about a continuous effort to be able to, it's not like it's a one-time thing. So it's a crucial mindset for professionals in the cybersecurity field. Then to Deo and the team, I would like to thank you for the opportunity that you've given me to discuss my journey in audit. I appreciate the time you've taken to give me the opportunity to share my perspectives on security audits, the vulnerabilities, and then as I look forward to more conversations on this. Just like Ingrid says, she has learned. I know I've also picked up, I've also picked up a few things that, I know that I'll also implement. So I thank you for the opportunity and look forward to more of such engagements. So thank you all.
Thank you.
And to you, Ingrid, I wish you all the best in the field. Audit it's a wonderful field. I personally love audit. I have the passion for my work. And it's nice when you see organizations improve in terms of risk management, governance, compliance, and you know that you did have a hand in seeing all those achievements. So it's beautiful. So amidst all the challenges, just know that there's always someone out there that has done it. So all you have to do is reach out, just like we've mentioned, get a mentor, professionalize, because when you are in the field, one thing that will make you break those glass ceilings is actually when you are a professional in the field. So you do that, but then also but then again, there's also another front where you would want there to be a differentiator. There'll now be so many ladies in the IT field, but then why would someone choose Ingrid over another person? So even as you're developing yourself in the field, try and just find out that you can do that would make you different from the rest. So that is a bit about what maybe I can tell that is specific, maybe not to you, but to any other person that is listening. You want there to be that differentiator. But when someone is looking for an IT professional, when someone is looking for an audit professional, that they would actually be able to pick you and not someone else. But then again, it's a journey. Just keep on improving yourself, and the sky will only be. It's not the limit. What do they say? The sky is the beginning, or something like that. I wish you the best. I honestly wish you the best in the field.
Yeah, thank you, Emily, and thank you for letting me tap into your wealth of knowledge. I've definitely taken a lot from this, and I've penciled down that coffee date.
In pencil
Awesome.
only. Okay. 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 With that, I would like to close here. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.